She was born in a minor German duchy that most people couldn't find on a map. She spoke no Russian. She had no royal claim to anything. She was 14 years old when she arrived in Russia, and she was nobody. 34 years later, she was Catherine the Great, the longest reigning female ruler in Russian history, one of the most powerful monarchs in the world, and a woman so skilled at controlling perception that even her enemies ended up helping build her legend. She didn't seize power through force alone. She seized it through something far more dangerous, the ability to make people see exactly what she needed them to see. In the study of power, there is a principle that most people learn too late: reality matters less than perception. What you are is almost irrelevant. What people believe you are, that is everything. Catherine II of Russia understood this principle before she had a throne, before she had allies, before she had anything except an extraordinary mind and the awareness that she was surrounded by people who would destroy her the moment she stopped being useful. She was born Sophie Friederike August von Anhalt-Zerbst in 1729. Not Russian, not Orthodox, not legitimate. She was a political arrangement, a German bride selected for the heir to the Russian throne, Peter III, a man who was unstable, openly hostile to Russia, and contemptuous of his own wife. She could have remained what she was, a footnote, a foreign princess who married badly and disappeared quietly into history. Instead, she engineered one of the most sophisticated psychological transformations in the history of power. She didn't just change her name. She changed her identity. She changed the story. And then she changed the country. When Sophie arrived in Russia at 14, she made a decision that most people in her position never made. She chose to become the country, not just inhabit it. She learned Russian with obsessive speed, studying through the night, reportedly contracting a serious illness because she left her bed barefoot to practice vocabulary in the cold. When she recovered and her tutors urged her to rest, she refused. The illness itself became part of the story. See how much she loves Russia? She nearly died for the language. She converted to Russian Orthodoxy with theatrical conviction, taking the name Yekaterina, Catherine, and performing the conversion with a level of devotion that silenced her critics before they could speak. Foreign princess? Yes. But she wept at the right moments, recited the liturgy flawlessly, and knelt on the cold church floor longer than anyone required. Modern social psychologists call this identity mirroring, the practice of reflecting a group's values back to them so completely that you become indistinguishable from the group itself. Catherine didn't just assimilate. She out-Russified the Russians. She read their history, studied their Orthodox theology, understood the political landscape of the court with a precision that native-born aristocrats lacked. By the time she staged the coup that removed her husband from power in 1762, the Guards regiments who supported her didn't see a German usurper. They saw the only person who actually understood and cared about Russia. That perception, manufactured over 18 years of relentless psychological work, was worth more than any army. Once Catherine had the throne, she faced a problem that every illegitimate ruler eventually faces. She needed the world to believe she deserved it. She began a correspondence with Voltaire, the most famous intellectual in Europe, a man whose approval functioned like a social media verification badge in the 18th century. She wrote to him. She flattered him. She sent him gifts. She described her reforms in terms that made her sound like the embodiment of Enlightenment philosophy. And Voltaire wrote back calling her the greatest ruler in the world. She did the same with Diderot. When he fell into financial trouble, Catherine bought his library and paid him a salary to keep it for his lifetime. In return, Diderot became one of her most vocal admirers. This was not generosity. This was investment. Every endorsement from the great minds of the Enlightenment reframed the coup, the dead husband, the sidelined son. All of it became irrelevant compared to the image of a philosopher queen bringing reason and civilization to the vast Russian darkness. She built the Hermitage, not just as a palace, but as a monument to the proposition that Russia was a civilized European power and that she was its civilized European leader. Soft power before the term existed. Reputation management before it was a profession. In 1773, a Cossack soldier named Yemelyan Pugachev declared himself the true emperor of Russia and sparked one of the largest peasant rebellions in Russian history. She did not panic publicly. She did not leave the capital. She performed composure so complete that the court took its emotional cue from her and stayed calm. She refused to call Pugachev by his assumed imperial name. In all official communications, he was referred to only as the criminal, never as Peter, never as emperor. Language was a weapon, and she controlled it absolutely. When Pugachev was finally captured, She ordered the execution to be swift and simple. Her reasoning was psychologically precise. A prolonged, spectacular execution would make him a martyr. A quiet death made him nobody. Then, immediately after suppressing the rebellion, she implemented reforms addressing some of the very grievances that had fueled it, but never acknowledged any connection. The message was clear: I was going to do this anyway. You changed nothing. Catherine the Great had favorites, men who served simultaneously as romantic partners and political instruments. Her enemies spread rumors and mockery that followed her for centuries. She never defended herself against a single word of it. Every hour spent defending her personal life was an hour not governing. Every defensive statement would have elevated the attacks to the level of official concern. By ignoring the slander completely and continuing to govern with remarkable effectiveness, she rendered the attacks irrelevant. Her competence was the rebuttal. Her relationship with Grigor Potemkin was political architecture as much as personal connection. Potemkin administered the newly conquered southern territories, built cities, organized military campaigns that expanded Russian power to the Black Sea. When European ambassadors toured the region, what they saw was a thriving imperial province, and Catherine, standing beside the man who built it, looked like a ruler of extraordinary vision. Catherine the Great wrote her own memoirs. The memoirs are a carefully constructed document, candid, self-critical in strategic places, sympathetic in their portrait of a young woman trapped in a miserable marriage, and deeply designed to tell exactly the story Catherine wanted told. She described Peter III as erratic, childish, cruel, and incompetent. She described herself as patient, intellectual, long-suffering, and ultimately forced into action for the good of Russia. The coup wasn't ambition. It was necessity. She never published the memoirs in her lifetime. She wrote them for posterity, for the historians who would shape her legacy after she was gone. She was writing the primary source she wanted them to find. She also titled herself. The Great was not bestowed upon her by a grateful nation. It was proposed during her lifetime, with her knowledge, and she accepted it without false modesty. A ruler who accepts the title the Great is asserting something, not just receiving a compliment. Catherine the Great ruled Russia for 34 years, expanded its territory by hundreds of thousands of square miles, founded cities, reformed the legal system, engaged the greatest minds of the Enlightenment, and died in her bed. Her life contains one lesson: identity is not fixed. It can be built, deliberately, over years. Reputation can be engineered, not through lies, but through choosing which truths to amplify. Crises are psychological as much as practical. And the story you tell about yourself will outlast any achievement, any enemy, any scandal, if you tell it skillfully enough. She was a German nobody who became Catherine the Great. The throne was just paperwork.